Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May we request everyone to be seated as the program will start shortly. We also request our audience here in NISMED to please turn off your mobile phones. This afternoon's program will be webcast and beamed live to UP Manila, UP Los Baños, UP Visayas in Iloilo, Cebu, and Tacloban, UP Mindanao, UP Baguio, and the UP Open University. At this point, we would like to acknowledge the presence of UP President, Dr. Emerlinda Roman. We have two of our chancellors, Chancellor Luis Ray Velasco of UP Los Baños, Chancellor Minda Formacion of UP Visayas, officials of the UP system. I see here VP Ami Guevara and VP Armin Sartu. Of course, officials from UP Diliman, led by Vice Chancellor Lorna Paredes, as well as other officials from other constituent UP universities, and our guests here in NISMED, including the faculty, students, reps, alumni, and staff. Also, I am pleased to note that we are joined this afternoon by guests from other government agencies. I'd like to make special mention of the Director of Pag-asa, Director Pris Cornilo, the Director of FIVOX, Dr. Renato Solidu. We also have guests from DSWD, the National Water Regulatory Board, DPWH, NBCC, and we have with us a Balik scientist from the OST, Dr. Chofilo Abrahano. Thank you for joining us. Before we proceed to our forum proper, let us watch a short video that documents the Philippines' best practices of community-based disaster management. This video will provide us with useful ideas on how academic institutions like UP may contribute towards reducing risks and managing disasters.
With the Gawad Kalasag, the National Disaster Coordinating Council hopes to institutionalize excellence in disaster risk management and humanitarian assistance. Gawad Kalasag was conceived to encourage various stakeholders in designing and implementing disaster risk management programs for high-risk communities.
Carmen is situated at the west bank of Cagayan de Oro River, yung pinakamalaking river talaga dito sa Cagayan de Oro. Kaya every time na tataas yung tubig, yung water level ng Cagayan de Oro River, isa talaga yung Carmen na tinatamaan dun sa flood na mangyayari.
All these efforts by community stakeholders themselves have resulted in a more efficient disaster management system for the village government.
Yung role kasi ng local government units, sir, is support na lang talaga. We do the food support, yung transportation support for evacuation, and yung mga malalaki na talagang kailangan ng grupo. But the basics talaga is rooted here talaga sa community.
Kasi ang priority is ensure that disaster risk reduction will be a priority of the national and local governments. Then yung identification of hazard to enhance early warning. So, alam nila doon sa barangay Carmen through their hazard map kung ano yung mga areas na prone to a certain hazard.
Every year, the province of Negros Occidental reels from an onslaught of typhoons. Even without typhoons, the monsoon rains inundate the island, often flooding as much as 70% of the land. And in the heart of the province looms the ever-constant threat of a volcanic eruption from Mount Canlaon. Even in the other towns in the province, disaster mitigation and reduction is a priority. The town of Pontevedra relocated a whole community of residents who were identified to be at risk to storm surges. Olongapo City saw the worst disaster when the Mount Pinatubo volcano erupted in 1991. Many of its residents saw it as the end of the world. Little did they know that it would mark the beginning of a Gawad Kalasag consistent awardee that would also be a part of the Hall of Fame.
Kaya maraming bahay dito ang nagiba. Yung hospital namin, nagiba yan. Yung city hall, mga eskwelahan, mga bahay, nagiba yan. Dahil doon sa 1 foot na bumagsak sa amin na mga asphalts. Ano? Talagang kala namin noon ay katapusan na ng mundo. Dahil na merong typhoon, umuulan, kumukulog, kumikidlat, every 3 minutes lumilindol.
Yung aming flash flood evacuation drill exercises na nangyari nga, prior to the typhoon na dumating noon, nag-conduct kami ng drill. Isang buong community yun, isang buong area, which is Mactan area. So a week after po naming mag-drill, talagang umulan po at na-practice po yung kinonduct po namin sa kanilang exercises.
Despite the many awardees that have been given the Gawad Kalasag and the good practices developed and documented over the years, the Philippines is still listed among the most hazard-prone countries. And members of the Hall of Fame are mindful of these challenges but remain upbeat about the future. In 2005, members of the international community gathered in the Hyogo Prefecture in Japan to establish a unified framework for action for risk reduction. 5 priority areas were identified. Ensure that disaster risk reduction is a national and a local priority with a strong institutional basis for implementation. Identify, assess, and monitor disaster risks and enhance early warning. Use knowledge, innovation, and education to build a culture of safety and resilience at all levels. Reduce the underlying risk factors. Strengthen disaster preparedness for effective response at all levels.
Good afternoon once again, and welcome to the Forum on Reducing Risks and Disasters Due to Rainfall Variability. We would like to repeat that this afternoon's program will be beamed live to the following campuses: UP Manila, UP Los Baños, UP Visayas in Iloilo, Cebu and Tacloban, UP Mindanao, UP Baguio, and UP Open University. It is also being webcast through the internet for wider coverage. And since we are on webcast, our audience from anywhere in the world may send in their questions for our presenters and panelists during the open forum. Please rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyat ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulubi, di ka pasisigil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo pagkak. Awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagtitigil. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng aming pagsikta, ay hayangin sa likod. Aming ligaya na pagkay mga akin, pagkamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please take your seat. set the tone for this afternoon's program, may I call on the President of the University of the Philippines for her message. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Emerlinda Roman.
Good afternoon, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Following the UP Centennial Lectures in 2008 and what we agreed on during the Subic Conference in 2009 on UP's role in raising the level of public discourse on national issues, the University Center for Integrative and Development Studies this afternoon brings together our colleagues to discuss yet another important issue that faces the country today. But let me go back to some months ago to share with you some of the initiatives we have taken so far. In November 2009, or 6 months after the Subic Conference, we held the first public discourse on the subject of universal health care. Then, in March 2010, our discussion focused on another pressing national issue, education. The education panel examined the Basic Education Sector Reform Agenda, or BESRA, and extended its analysis to higher education, proposing guidelines to reform it. Today, we are going to tackle yet another major concern, disaster risk management. July, being National Disaster Consciousness Month, is one good reason for this timing. July, of course, being the month of the devastating earthquake in Luzon in 1990, or 20 years ago, is another good reason. And July is also the typhoon season in this country. So very significantly, even as we meet today in this forum, we are confronted both by potential flood and potential drought. Rainfall variability, or climate variability as a whole, is a real threat to life, food supply, and property. In various regions of the Philippines, Metro Manila, or our national capital region itself, is as vulnerable as other places in the Philippines to drought effects. And just last year, we were reminded quite harshly that Metro Manila is not immune to big floods. Of late, there have been many discussions on climate change and the need for adaptation and mitigation. Certainly, this is a subject matter that is not confined to us. It is a global situation that calls for local action. There are climate risks to begin with that we need to manage. Global climate change is merely escalating the problematic local situation that we are already in. This afternoon, we are going to hear from a panel of UP faculty researchers who will focus on the nature and adverse consequences of rainfall variability at the local, regional, and national levels. They will try to examine the ways by which we can reduce death, damage, and destruction. And you will observe that our panel this afternoon consists of a mix of experts from various disciplines. And this is because disaster risk management involves multidisciplinary perspectives.